Alright, so a few days ago, Goji Center also uploaded a video explaining the new D-Rex in the new Jurassic World movie, and I'm quite curious to see his perspective on it. I know we already checked out Dangerville's video, but I'm quite curious to see what Goji Center has to say. Do subscribe and check out his videos. They deserve all the love, and yeah, let's get into it. Warning, this video may contain scenes of images that may...
millions of people were watching the highly anticipated trailer to the next adventure in the Jurassic universe, there was no doubt that the one big question on everyone's minds was, what the hell is that?
Xenomorph dome looking
ass.
ass.
On this episode of Goji Center, we're going to take a deep dive into everything we figured out about the latest Jurassic World monstrosity.
I'm ready
Before
for it.
we proceed, however, note that we will be analyzing both the trailer, behind-the-scenes information, and share some plausible plot leak information found in the wretched corners of the internet, including a possible full design reveal of this new monster. So,
it looks so
here's
sick.
a potential spoiler
Hunchback.
warning for this year's upcoming blockbuster. Don't say we didn't warn you.
Yeah, so if you guys don't want any spoilers on the new creature, do click off. But if you want to see more, then let's go.
In Jurassic World Rebirth, we follow both a wayward family and a hired mercenary group working for a
Scarlett
pharma
Johansson,
company
nice.
winding up on an unknown island with a grim present and
Hot,
an
bro.
even
What can I say?
darker history. Dinosaurs released into the world in the last couple of movies have
This guy got
settled into
trampled big
areas
time.
like this, and InGen was conducting some of their earliest experiments in the same location many decades ago. But nothing, from the pack-hunting Spinosaurus to the kaiju-sized Titanosaurs,
Spino.
was as horrifying as this. The Goji Center modeling team has quickly put together a three-dimensional model of what we think the new mutant monster looks like, standing possibly over 25 feet tall.
Bro,
and
that
no
looks
doubt having a
amazing.
weight in the tens of...
Bro, that looks so sick. Got a big tail, actually. Damn. I've imagined this little hands would be able to hold this guy. It walks like a gorilla, so that's probably part of its DNA. T-Rex, obviously, probably for the jaw and size, and I don't know what's going on here with the hunchback. Bro, he's part whale.
thousands of pounds, this nightmarish
massive,
beast
bro.
doesn't have a confirmed
7.6
name
meters
yet,
tall.
but as a
Damn.
tribute to a forgotten monstrosity
shit.
from the 90s, we're also nicknaming this the D-Rex for now. Even after all the strange beasts we've seen in the franchise, nothing comes close to this. A malformed mutant with multiple sets of arms, knuckle-walking fists with
Xenomorph-shaped
massive claws,
head.
and a bulbous forehead that could imply anything from echolocation abilities like a beluga or a malformed skull like some embryos develop. For this part of the video, we'll entertain the idea
It could
that
also
this
be
was
just really
not an
hard, like
intentional
the-
design. After all,
can't remember what it's
6
called.
limbs, a body that looks like somebody threw a Rancor into a blender with a Muto, and huge knuckle-walking fists
And a
aren't
Xenomorph.
exactly anything you find in the
Rancor
dinosaur
and a
fossil
Muto.
record. According to scattered rumors and a few alleged plot details, this was one of the very earliest genetic creations by InGen, back in the 1980s, when the genomes were sequenced further before being shipped off to production on Site B. This would make even more sense considering Rexy was one of the earliest dinosaurs the company created, according to the viral marketing, being born sometime in the late 1980s. If InGen did indeed create this animal, this
1980s,
malformed
okay.
abomination would almost certainly
Wait,
be older
when the-
and was made with older tech. Having said this, it is actually quite possible that this animal could be reaching its 50s, assuming it was made in the mid to
50,
late
old
70s.
bitch.
If it was made in the early 80s, then we'd still be looking at an animal well beyond the life expectancy of a real T-Rex, with the very old specimens not living much past the age of 30. It's almost certain that this
1993.
mutant Rex has many...
So the first Jurassic Park movie took place in 1993. So that makes Rexy about 13 years old, I'd assume, because you said something in the 1980s. So Rexy's about 10 to 13 years old, maybe.
years under its
Damn.
belt. With
That's pretty
old
young,
age,
wouldn't
we
it
can
be?
also
No, I think
associate
that's maybe
older
middle age.
technology, and this may have
Didn't
been
they
a
say
culprit as to why it
T-Rex
came
could
out
get like
looking
25
this
years or
way.
something?
Genetics technology from the start to the end of the 80s was drastically more primitive compared to the tech scene in the early 90s, let alone the much more advanced
Dennis
computers used
Nedry.
in the 2010s.
Idiots.
Things like CM5 supercomputers used on Isla Nublar and Sorna were not around back then.
The throwback. Hold up.
And Sorna
It kind of looks like Africa. What takes the spot? Does kind of look like Africa. The part of Pocha looks like Africa quite a lot.
were not around back then.
Hello, John. Hello, John. Thinking machine supercomputers and gene sequencers break down the strand in minutes. We use the
Minutes.
complete DNA of a frog to fill in the holes and
Yeah.
complete the code.
Yeah,
That
frogs
little
were
bit of
very,
marketing
very
in Hammond's
used.
show and tell
Very much
might
used.
be plot relevant. Tech like that was integral to making the incomplete DNA viable by either repairing the code or filling in the missing parts with frog DNA correctly. Yeah, this is really easy to screw up, which is why in the real world we don't see much of this happening. If more primitive tech was used in the creation of this mutant, that might explain how this animal wound up looking the way it does. To be clear, the InGen geneticists behind the creation of this D-Rex were not planning...
I mean, that could have been a thing, but it also could be that because it could have been one of the first, maybe they didn't quite know how to do the genetic combining, per se. But then maybe there's too many that they tried to put together, and then all those DNAs were clashing, and then it exploded. Not exploded, but you guys know what I mean. It didn't work. Didn't want to evolve correctly, and then just messed up and became this monster.
This animal was probably a failed attempt at making a giant theropod. No amount of healthy hybridization splicing should ever cause multiple limbs to appear. Alright, so in the following segment, we're going to learn a bit of genetics, so brace tight and pay close attention. Understanding this will help you appreciate this mutant Rex just a tiny bit more, and open a possible theory for another bizarre explanation as to why this animal exists.
Can't believe I missed it the first time I saw this.
Are clusters of genes that control the basic body plan of any animal. Mutations can change the shape and size of limbs, that's how evolution can happen. But these genes are hard-coded so that the body configuration stays the same. That is why tetrapods like us and every other land vertebrate have never had limbs where our heads are, or arms sticking out of our legs, or more than 4 limbs after 300 million years.
Those are SCP monsters right there, bro.
Gene splicing shouldn't cause this. So, what went wrong? We can blame this on a phenomenon known as polymelia. This is a rare mutation that affects the Hox genes. It happens when there's a mistake in the DNA that causes the Hox genes to duplicate or change, leading to problems with the animal's body structure. In this case, the geneticists botched the DNA rebuilding process using subpar computers or just weren't careful enough to fill these gaps. The result was a bastardized attempt at creating the franchise's iconic star. Let's take another, more closer look at the mutant Rex. Now note that this animal all over the internet has been referred to as a mutant. Not a hybrid, not an amalgamation, but a mutant. This word has many other implications as well. Usually when an animal is mutated, there could be instances where any extra adjacent limbs or even heads are not placed in perfect symmetry. Examples of this include Stumpy the four-legged duck, born with its normal set of legs, but with an extra 2 asymmetrical limbs.
Do they work?
An animal born in a Croatian farm with duplicate sets of limbs, a total of 8, is another example of animals that went through mutations during their embryonic stage, yielding an extra set of limbs. Our mutant Rex here could have gone through a similar situation. With 2 extra large limbs congruent enough for it to be able to knuckle walk, but with 2 extra smaller limbs with 2 digits,
got 3 fingers.
Was present in the real-life T-Rex. But these elongated front limbs are something that are not present in T-Rex. So, what happened here? Remember, in the Jurassic Park film, it was mentioned that frog DNA was used to fill in the gaps in the genetic code of some of these animals. It is a plausible theory that the use of this animal could explain the D-Rex's unsettling appearance. Most frogs famously go through a metamorphosis, where the tadpole starts growing limbs as the tail shrinks as they mature.
Amphibian.
This is after they are born. This might have been an explanation as to why things got messed up during the D-Rex's
They put in too much frog DNA.
At the time of the creation of this video, there is no official reveal of the full design of this creature. So far, however, things may seem like this animal features bilateral symmetry, meaning both sides of this animal are the same. This would actually be extremely rare in a mutated animal. So, having said this, there is still a chance that the limbs of this animal may be slightly asymmetrical, resulting in a creature experiencing
the one-sided plate is going to be slumped
and a painful existence.
It's going to have a lazy eye.
In the trailer, we see certain shots showing one of our heroes, Duncan, luring it away with a flare, further lining up with the possibility that this animal was indeed an early attempt at making a T-Rex, since both this and Rexy are attracted to flares. T-Rex features are visible in the face, a wide jaw somewhat resembling that of T-Rex mandibles. Even if these may not be working at optimal capacity, we could still expect a monstrous bite force that could snap a person in 2. That is, if it could even reach them. The build of this animal strangely...
Let's just be real. Any carnivorous dinosaur could have snapped a human in 2. Except for Compy, okay? Dilo, at all the stages, yes. Well, not snapping too, but close enough. But except for Compies.
Resembles a muto.
We are just
if an
weak,
animal
bro.
Like this, at this speculated height, were to bring its jaws close to the ground to eat a human, it would have to mimic this stance, spreading its front limbs to the side enough to bring its head low.
Jurassic World.
This is inefficient
This is
in terms of
the
combat,
combination we
leading us to
needed.
believe that this mutation forces the animal to use its front limbs as its main weapon.
Although it's
The
like a
predominant
giraffe. Also,
two-digit
giraffe
hands
also
could serve as a
giraffes also spread their legs apart to drink water and stuff. So maybe it's part giraffe. Friggin' shit.
potential
Bro, got a
striking
long
or
tongue, then.
slashing weapon, only using its jaws at very close range and if needed. The only reason why this
I got
would
no
be a
pupils,
good
though?
combatant would be because of its size and reach. Speaking of which, we need to figure out why this animal ended up being so big, despite its base genome being a T-Rex. Recall what we learned about Hawk's genes.
Horse,
Our
I mean,
theory is that
giraffe,
because these
shit.
were possibly corrupted during the embryonic stage, the affected Hawk's gene cluster might influence growth-related genes, not only
Looks like
adding additional
jowl,
limbs, but
jelly.
also the size of these limbs.
What the
Note
heck?
that the height
Not a
of
big
T-Rex is
dome.
largely due to its elongated limbs.
Yeah.
During this animal's embryonic stage, it is the Hawk's genes that normally influence the number and length of these limbs, resulting in polymelia. The mass of the body, torso, and head is still similar in mass to a normal.
I mean, there has to be maybe gorilla or something, because gorillas' forelimbs are longer than their legs. You know what I mean? So, like, maybe.
Jurassic Park T-Rex. It's the limbs that were affected. However, this does not end here. Hawk's mutations
iguanodon, or I
sometimes
don't know.
also lead to something called Neotenic traits. This is where
Okay.
certain juvenile characteristics are retained in adult form.
Why does it look? Is this what it looks like as a baby? Like, what the heck is this little toy? It's like something you give to a child. You put it in a glass of water and it grows up to be something bigger. Like, what the heck is this?
This can explain why D-Rex retained a bulbous-looking head upon maturing and a strange
Xenomorph
natal
head.
form on its upper torso. The result of all the discussed
the-
mutations is this: a botched
That just looks
attempt
fake.
at making a T-Rex, but functional enough to have
It's a toy.
survived for a very long time. This scene in a functional facility featuring the T-Rex is probably a flashback to when this lab was functional. Note the size difference between this one and this one, meaning that this
Much.
one was likely an infant.
Juvenile.
But a more interesting observation is the fact that this animal is seemingly taking its time to attack this individual. This
It's
suggests
benevolent.
that this creature, despite being younger,
Smart.
already displays traits of a shrewd and collected individual.
Cunning.
Not rushing to acquire an easy meal, but more observant, learning about its world as it grew. What does this mean
Like
for
the
this
Indom's
even
gonna
older
be
and
really
mature
smart,
mutant
but like to
Rex?
kill.
Perhaps an even more frightening, intelligent, and perhaps malevolent new monster. There is one alternative way to look at this, and this is purely based on a few hints that have been pointed out in the trailer. Earlier, we discussed the idea that these scenes showcased a lab owned by InGen. Assuming that they weren't, and instead were owned by another brand new company
Created
introduced to the
Velociraptor.
franchise, Parker-Genix, we may be looking at a scenario where this mutant isn't exactly too old. This theory has
Spider-Man
merit,
gonna be in
given
the
that
movie,
some of
boys,
the tech seen in these
confirmed.
clips isn't exactly screaming 1980s, but rather a more recent timeline closer to the 2010s. Company takeovers of other islands such as Manticorp seen in Camp Cretaceous and Mazrani in Isla Nublar prove that this has already happened before. The most important takeaway
What?
from all of this is the following. If this mutant was created in the modern era, was this actually an experiment gone wrong? We already discussed that Hawk's genes are practically what control how certain traits of an animal look like. Believe it or
big
not,
dome,
these
bro.
actually can and have been tampered with before to create custom augmentations to animals. Just now, during the creation of this episode, we received word that Argentinian biotech company Chiron created a genetically modified horse that was augmented
What
to
the-
run faster. Allegedly, the entire genome of this horse was modified and
What is going on in
completed before
Argentina?
this animal even underwent gestation. Sound familiar? That's right. The gene that developed the appropriate muscles that allowed faster acceleration speed were tampered with precision, creating a horse that is a lot faster than
That's
the base
interesting.
genome of Champion Polo Puerta, the horse that served as a base. These methods and technology have been researched for many years. So, back to the Jurassic universe, and using this logic, there is probably a chance that the same thing
I wonder how fast that horse can go. What does it actually? Give me a second. Okay. So horses can run 20 to 30 miles per hour, but the fastest can reach 40. I wonder if this can go like maybe 45, 50, 60. That would be crazy.
Could have happened here. By targeting the appropriate genes and identifying them as the ones that mess with limbs, bone length, and even muscular augmentation, Parker-Genix perhaps knew what they were doing the entire time. This process had to be done with modern tech, serving as further evidence that this animal was probably made by Parker-Genix. This entire excuse to go back to an island and get a hold of 3 large animals could just be a cover-up to once again regain possession of a valuable genetically altered asset. One who laid waste to this lab long ago, but now sought after to be reclaimed by its own creators.
Bro, what? Again, this is still quite a mysterious mutant dinosaur D-Rex, but still it looks damn cool. There's so many... How can I say this? I don't know. There has to be more than just a frog, obviously. There's multiple DNA contributors to it. Well, I mean, when the movie comes out, we'll probably find out more, but for now, it's still a mystery. But yeah, I'll check you guys in the next one, and yeah, peace out.